Well, Simon, we certainly get a lot of questions, people uncertain when it comes to different energy choices that are out there for all of us, and particularly about wind turbines.
A lot of misinformation, too. Questions and misinformation.
I agree with you.
Because there seems to be some kind of an emotional reaction to certain, certain things like wind turbines. And, I'm all for anything green energy that makes sense economically, because otherwise it just wouldn't be practical. It wouldn't work. But I think the key to misinformation is to give people the real stuff and the real facts around, what's going on in the industry, what are the various options.
And then you can make a real educated choice.
Absolutely.
You're not just guessworking here.
Yeah.
And none of us want to waste money and spend money on something that, of course, is not going to give us the results that we're looking for. So we have somebody here in studio with us and very excited about, because boy, oh boy, he is one knowledgeable man and a lot of fun to boot. We have Peter Wetzel, and he's the Vice President, Technical Product Innovation for Strand Energy Corporation. And
it's
of
a
course,
mouthful.
It's a mouthful, but Strand Energy Corporation, they're certainly doing their part because, Simon, we're all about education. And of course, that's really what they're about as well. So Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And I love the fact that you wore your shirt, and it's wearing that logo proudly. Attaboy. Perfect.
Can you all see it?
We'll do a close-up for you. So maybe you can tell us more about Strand Energy.
Well, Strand Energy was started with Carl Strand, our president. He basically started with he's had many things over the years, but his wind turbine he started in 2000 was looking at every turbine that was out there and saying, what's wrong with them? And most turbines out there have all copied an older technology and never really improved on things. And he looked at the aspect and said, there's vertical, there's horizontal. Let's look at a vertical turbine sort of with the horizontal aspect. And we've created a turbine with multiple fins, similar to the vertical axis, but with a second set of fins on the outside that allowed trapping of the air to make double concentration to get more power at lower speeds, which is a big problem with turbines. There isn't any power at low speeds. But also, it's quiet, it's balanced. And then if the winds come along that are too great, you can close the outer fins and you protect it. The Bahamas are excited because they can put these in hurricane areas and they don't destroy the turbines because the fins will close. So it's been a long time coming, and we're just finalizing the R&D stages to hopefully get in production in a year's time to have these different size turbines to the point where we can actually stand them up in columns, multiple big turbines, and create more power than the one big turbine you see now that's not as aesthetically pleasing, and it's going to be quiet.
Yeah, and don't you think, Simon, a lot of people, for when you're driving and you go through an area that has the wind turbines, a lot of people say it's not attractive. Mm-hmm. But then their concern, of course, is the noise. That's a lot you hear about. It's complaints of the noise aspect or what it's doing to the, what we call sound pollution and what that does to us in terms of health. And then, of course, I think a lot of the discussion's been around the birds, right? And just the fact that, I think downtown Toronto is a prime example of look at our buildings and how many we lose because of lights being left on. So, you can't win it all. But if we can take something, and it's not reinventing the wheel, Peter, what you're saying is you're actually taking something and you're perfecting it. You're making it better. So that way people can feel good about it, Simon, and know that they're now using something or something is being produced that actually is more efficient, getting greater and better results. Yeah. But we're working towards a solution as opposed to putting stuff up that's not as good.
And a problem really with Canada, and that's why we lack in the world, is that we really have turbulent wind. We don't have great wind, and many turbines spend more time seeking the wind than spinning.
So explain that. When you say we're turbulent wind.
If people will say, it's very windy here. But if you actually put some balloons up with ribbons on it and watch the ribbons, they would all be fluttering. They would never be steady. Like the Shelburne area was a perfect area for an air stream that goes across that part of the province where all the turbines got set up. Because outside that, none of those turbines would really work. So we looked at it and said, if we do with multiple fins in a big circle, it doesn't matter what direction it's coming from. And it looks pleasing and it's quiet.
So when you're saying places like in the Caribbean, of course, that have that prevailing wind, in England, right? Any place that's, got large body of water, consistent offshore wind, that's fantastic. But we're a very large country, right? And we got lots of peaks and valleys and beautiful topography. But as you said, if you don't have the consistent wind, that's a lot of energy loss by a piece of equipment trying to seek out the wind it needs to function properly.
Yeah.
And people are typically thinking, when we say turbines, they're typically thinking those big, propeller-looking things like the front of an airplane. And personally, I've never had any really issues with them. Well, aesthetics aside, because that seems to be an issue for a lot of people, the fact is we have to look at what is the most efficient and what is the most practical? And aside from the industrial and commercial applications, is this something that I as a homeowner could consider putting on top of my roof? I mean, because this is not going to be, I wouldn't want a 18-foot wide propeller sticking out of the top of my roof, but this looks like, this looks like just some of the vents on top of my roof right now. So what would be the dimensions, for example, of a residential application turbine?
Well, the smallest you really want to go is a 1 kilowatt system, and that's what we're aiming for the homeowners. And it's going to be probably a 3-foot diameter, 3 to 4 feet high in size, that can literally fit on the peak of your roof or top of a flat building or flat roof. And bigger roofs can have, flat roofs can have a 10 kilowatt, bigger turbine. But basically, the smaller ones are going to be aimed at the homeowner.
And what kind of cost are we looking at? Because that's the first question I think a lot of people would have. What would it cost? How is it installed? Would it impact my roof? And then what's the benefit? How much energy is generated? What's the cost savings?
There is a great return. I mean, the cost of these isn't cheap. They're generally a 1 kilowatt turbine of any style, and this probably will be included, would be in a $5,000 range.
Okay.
But if it's in a good spot, turning like it should, like at least especially with focused wind, you should be getting a good result of power every day out of that system. So the payback is going to be real. It's going to be a few years. It's not going to be decades, right? So that's the difference. And after that, you own it. It's going to constantly be producing power, and usually in the winter and at night.